Hello, pre-algebra students. Today we are covering section 1.1 and you will follow along in your guided notes. The first thing I would like you to do is write your name and also today's date. Our topic for section 1.1 is translate verbal phrases into expressions. So you're going to translate verbal phrases into numerical expressions. So that's not algebra yet because it's just numbers. You will also be using the order of operations to evaluate expressions. Numerical expressions contain a combination of numbers and operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Since these are Cornell notes, you could, in your notes section on the side, on the left side, you could put add, subtract, multiply, and sometimes we use a dot, sometimes we use an asterisk, and divide. And sometimes for divide, we'll use a fraction bar. For our first example, we are going to write numerical expressions for each verbal phrase, and that's right along with our learning objectives. 1A is saying we have the cost of 10 yo-yos is if each costs $3. The cost of 10 yo-yos. So I'm going to underline 10. And each costs, so each is $3. How could we translate that into a numerical expression? So if we have 10 yo-yos and they each cost $3, so we're going to write that as 10, right? This is $3. What are we going to do with those? And I know all of you know we're going to multiply. So the numerical expression would be 10 dot for times 3. And we're not going to say what it equals because today we're just writing numerical expressions, not equations. Equations have equals. And so you can either highlight or box your answer. That is our numerical expression. So the numerical expression versus the verbal phrase was all of this. And so the reason that we have math is to simplify things. 10 times 3 is a lot shorter than the cost of 10 yo-yos if each costs $3. We're going to pause the video right now and we're going to talk about 1B as a class. The next part of this section is talking about order of operations. I love order of operations, and we'll take some notes on the left side in our Cornell notes about order of operations. It says to evaluate an expression, you find its numerical value. If a numerical expression has more than one operation, use the order of operations. The order of operations are the rules to follow when evaluating an expression with more than one operation. So to do the order of operations, the first thing that we do is we evaluate the expressions inside grouping symbols. And grouping symbols can be parentheses, and they can also be brackets, and they can also be big fraction bars. Step 2 is multiplying or dividing in order from left to right. So I'm going to write multiply and or divide in order from left to right. So we'll either multiply or divide. Sometimes they show multiplication as a number next to parentheses. So we will talk about that when we see that in problem 2C. Then, the last thing that we do is we add and or subtract in order from left to right. So add or subtract. When I learned this, I learned it as PEMDAS. And now we use grouping instead of just parentheses because parentheses are only one form of grouping symbols, where parentheses, brackets, and division bars are all grouping symbols. So instead of PEMDAS, I like to say GEMDAS now, even though I learned it as PEMDAS. Okay, I see what's going on. The E is for exponents, and we haven't learned that yet. That's why it's not working out for me very well. Okay, so we're going to save the E for when we learn about exponents. So I'm going to write it really small. And then we have multiply and divide. And then we have add and subtract. And that's GEMDAS. So we're going to save the exponents for later. But if you remember GEMDAS, it helps you do the order of operations in the correct order. If you do operations in the incorrect order, you get an answer different than what was intended sometimes. Okay, let's do example 2, evaluate each expression. We're going to do 2A and 2C together, or I will do those two, and then we'll pause it to do 2B and 2D as a class. All right. In order from left to right, even though it says add and subtract in order from left to right, if subtraction comes in order from left to right, we'll do the subtraction first. So for 2A, we're going to subtract. I'm just going to rewrite the problem, and this is good practice for how I want your homework to look. This comes first because it's subtraction, and the subtraction came before the addition. 6 minus 3, and then I'm going to add 5, and that is equal to 8. This is how I want you to show your work for order of operations, so I can see step by step what you did. Okay, hopefully we have room for 2C. If not, we can kind of go into that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just start it over here so we definitely have enough room. We have 2 bracket parentheses 10 minus 3 parentheses plus 6 parentheses 5, close the brackets. And with parentheses and brackets, we have to do what's in the innermost part first. So the very most inner part parentheses with something to do inside the parentheses, not the 5. There's nothing to do with the 5. That's just showing multiplication. We are going to do this part first, 10 minus 3. That's 7. Then I want to bring everything down. Since I did 10 minus 3, I do not have to write those parentheses again. So I'm going to write just the bracket. And everything that was inside the parentheses just comes down. And we will practice this on a fun handout later. Little riddle. Bring that 2 down as well. Now I still have grouping symbols, so I still have to take care of the grouping symbols. And inside the grouping symbols, I have 7 plus 6 times 5. Well, in GEMDAS, multiplying comes before adding. So I'm going to multiply these 6 times 5 first. I think I'm going to make these highlighted so you can see that that's the step that I'm doing. Okay, so 6 times 5 is 30. Bring down the 7 plus, bring down the brackets, and bring down the 2. I still have grouping symbols. So now I'm going to do what's left, which is 7 plus 30. and 7 plus 30 is 37. I'm going to keep the brackets because I still have the 2, and if I just bring down 2 and 37, it will look like 237. So that becomes 2 times 37. 2 times 7 is 14. I'm going to hold that in my brain, 14. 2 times 30 is 60. 60 plus 14 is 74. And then you can either box or highlight your answer. I'm going to pause the video now so that we can have discussion about 2B and 2D. We know that 2C had a lot of steps, so we can also ask any questions that we have about those problems that we just did. We are on our last example, which is writing expressions to solve problems. Our problem says that cell phones, or it's about cell phones actually, and it says a phone company offers a plan where they charge $15 a month and 25 cents for each call made or received. Write and then evaluate an expression to find the cost for 40 calls during 1 month. Then make a table showing the cost for 40, 50, 60, and 70 calls. Okay, so the directions, it's kind of a lot, so I'm going to break it down. They charge $15 per month and 25 cents for each call made or received. And then the directions say to write and then evaluate an expression to find the cost for 40 calls during 1 month. Okay, so the expression would be $15 plus 25 cents for each call, but there are going to be 40 calls, so we have to multiply, and I'm going to show that as a parenthesis. Okay, that was the first set of directions. Oh, it says also evaluate. So to evaluate that, 40 times 25, that's 100. And, oh, I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's 10. And 15. So 15 plus 10, because, right, a quarter of 40 is 10. 15 plus 10 is $25. Now let's make a table. And I made the table bigger on the top, so that way we can put number of calls. See, I made the top row wider so that we could write in there. And then the expression will go here. And then the cost will go in the third column. And they wanted us to do this for 40, 50, 60, and 70. And we already did the 40. And that was $25. And then for 50, I copy the same pattern, but I'm going to plug in 50. And if I had 5 quarters, that'd be $1.25. I'm going to move the decimal one place, so it's $12.50 plus 15 is $27.50. I'm going to pause the video here and actually we'll do 60 and 70 together as a class, having discussion. And then I will explain to you what I want you to do in the summary and also talk to you about your homework, your very first homework for this class.